Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. It is a pleasure to welcome to the program Brittany Coleman, American Federation of Government Employees, Local 252 Chief Steward, an attorney for the Office of Civil Rights in Dallas under the auspices of the Department of Education. Brittany, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
We get a little bit of a lag there, but hopefully we'll take care of that in just a moment. So, Brittany, just walk us through. I'm looking at well, before we get to the letter, walk us through what your position is in the Office of Civil Rights, for the Department of Education, and who your colleagues are, not just in Dallas, but across the country.
Absolutely. So I am an attorney investigator at the Office of Civil Rights. There were at one point 12 regional offices, including the regional office in Dallas where I work in. So I had roughly 60 colleagues in my office, and we had hundreds of colleagues across the country. And what we did is that we received complaints from the public, usually parents who are concerned about issues happening with their children, who thought that their children are being discriminated against. So they'd file a complaint with our office. From there, I would evaluate it to see, is there a reason to think that this child may be discriminated? And if that's the case, that there may be a problem, I just do fact finding. I talk to the applicable parties. I could be teachers, principals, counselors, anybody that may have been involved in the matter, and from there just determine whether there was a concern that there was a violation of a child's civil rights based on race, color, sex, national origin, or disability.
And these are all statutory. I mean, these civil rights are statutory, and they're in statutory in terms of requirements on public schools to provide, in some instances, accommodation, or to not discriminate in some fashion.
Absolutely, that's correct. Because in my office, we enforce Title VI, which covers discrimination based on race, color, and national origin. We cover Title IX, which covers discrimination that's prohibited based on sex in both Title II and Section 4 of the Rehabilitation Act. So all of those acts are what we enforce to make sure that any school district or institution, that could be a trade school too, that gets federal funding, that they follow federal law and they don't treat children differently because of their race or disability.
And so what is the status of your job now?
The status of my job is that I am technically still employed at the Department of Education. We've been involved in a number of lawsuits my agency has concerning the reduction in force or layoff that has happened, where we've lost by now roughly half of our staff, and a number of people have been in limbo because of those lawsuits. Unfortunately, we got a decision from the Supreme Court that removed a preliminary injunction, which stopped the rift. So because the Supreme Court decided to make the decision that it did, it's now allowing that layoff to go forward. And a lot of my colleagues are now facing a layoff throughout the Department of Education. My office, the Office for Civil Rights, is in a different category because we are under another lawsuit. We've had a number of them where the courts are now, the agency is now prevented from carrying out that layoff with us. And so there's a decision on that case. So as of right now, what's happening, long story short, is that I don't have my laptop. I don't have access to agency systems. I can't work on any cases. My colleagues are in the same boat. So I'm technically still employed, but I'm not able to do the work that I was hired to do.
And we should be clear, a RIF is a reduction in force. And the argument that the administration is making is we don't need these people to fulfill the mission of the department. Now, that's the official argument. I feel comfortable, I don't know if you do, saying they just want to destroy the Department of Education. I think they've said that publicly, or at least some.
Trump says he wants to eliminate it.
And I think it's been literally articulated, but within the context of the legal arguments they're making, they are trying to argue that we don't need all these people. aside from the fact that, like, you know, what it's doing directly to people like yourself, they seem to have targeted specific departments in the Department of Education, which they're either going to farm out or just, I guess, eliminate the functions totally. Do you have a sense of what the breakdown is of that?
We're getting bits and pieces, and luckily I'm still on my union capacity, so I'm able to sit in on meetings. So I can tell you that, for instance, the Institute of Education Sciences, that is our data concordant. So what that unit does is that it collects education data from around the country, and it just sees, how well students are doing and just reports that data out. They don't have any skin in the game as far as the outcomes looking one way or the other. Unfortunately, that unit has been almost completely decimated. There are very few people left. They might have had, a couple hundred people, and now they're down to, in like maybe 20 to 30. So that was a huge reduction in that department. For the Office for Civil Rights, I think we've lost over half of our investigators. That's another issue. I think we have maybe close to 560 people across the country in our 12 regional offices. They closed 7 of those regional offices, so now we're down to maybe 200 and something investigators, which is a huge cut for our area as well. I can say within federal student aid, that is another big component at the Department of Education. That's our biggest area because they handle things like federal student aid and Pell grants and other financial areas, and also auditing, to make sure that those schools are compliant with the law as well. The component that usually enforces and makes sure that for-profit institutions, are compliant with the law, that area in particular, that accountability area, that oversight area was almost completely gutted. They went from 9 offices down to about 2. So what we're seeing is that, there are areas that have just been completely decimated that had very key roles in just really watching where the money went to schools, or, seeing what happens when schools use that money and determining whether the schools were actually living up to what they needed to do to make sure our kids are prepared for their next steps.
All right. I got a lot of questions about this, but in the wake of the Supreme Court case, my understanding is that the subsidiary cases can go forward, but in the meantime, the department can fire all these people. And I guess presumably if they lose the case, they'd have to rehire either these same people or other people, right? I mean, is that the question on us in terms of the subsidiary cases? Is the question like, are you legitimately able to complete the function or fulfill the function of the department with these reductions in employees, or are you just pretending? I mean, that's sort of the broad strokes of it, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, my union certs, I cert in my union capacity, and a lot of other stakeholders, which includes, 21 attorneys generals, a number of nonprofits, we all assert that they cannot do the work that they are statutorily obligated to do. As I mentioned with IES, the data component, they are statutorily required to provide that information. And now you don't have enough people to provide that. With the Office for Civil Rights, we're statutorily required to enforce the statutes that I mentioned, and to do so and to remedy those cases within generally 180 days. We are not able to do so at our current staffing levels. So that's the long and short of it. And truthfully, they're just not able to do it. I know that there have been assertions made by people within the agency and the administration that is what's happening, but that's not what we're seeing on the ground.
And so what happens to those people now if they get fired? Like, I mean, we're talking about your colleagues. Are in your division, is everybody just basically on paid leave, or have people been fired and then said, I've got to go find a different job, and would be presumably they'd go and look to rehire these people? I mean, and it also, I don't mean to throw too much at you one time, but it also seems to me that The people that you've talked about so far who are parties to this case are the employees and the states who require the services, essentially, of the Federal Department of Education to fill their obligation on a school level. But it seems to me at one point, there's going to be standing for specific students who feel their rights have been violated and that the Department of Education doesn't have the capacity to address that like they are statutorily obligated to. And then I would imagine just the general student population could argue, because you're not assessing how schools are doing by aggregating this data, I'm also not getting the statutorily required quality public education by the own definition that the U.S. government has set, in that there was an obligation to get this data in the first place. So I don't mean to throw too many questions at you one time, but what's the status of the employees now? And then do you anticipate there are going to be other cases brought by students at one point?
Okay, sure. So that's, that you have to break it down in a couple of groups as far as where the employees are right now. So you have employees like me who are in the Office for Civil Rights because we have an injunction from another case that was actually brought by people who have complaints within our office. They actually were a party to a lawsuit. That case is currently under injunction, so we are technically still employed. We're just not able to do our work because we lost access to our laptops and equipment. So then you have other people who were impacted by this, soon to be reduction in force and layoff, who are in federal student aid, IES, our Office of General Counsel, and a number of other areas that were told by the agency as soon as the Supreme Court decision came down on, I think it was last Monday, the 14th, by 4 p.m. that day, they received an email saying that, oh, by the way, your last day is going to be August 1st. So now we have people who are under the pressure of realizing that, oh man, I'm about to lose my job. Like, even though I see that we're not providing these services to the American public and I'm about to lose my livelihood and ability to provide for my kids, that's happening on August 1st because the Supreme Court decision is allowing them to do so for all the other areas. And, as I mentioned, for the case for the Office for Civil Rights, that was actually brought in part by people who have complaints with our office who have seen the investigations just get completely stalled because of this reduction in force. It's like we're not able to work on their cases, and these people have suffered legitimate harms. I mean, the facts that I read in the case are just horrific. Like, you have a child that was discriminated against and bullied because of their race. And you have another child that was bullied and harassed because of their disability. And, if the facts that are alleged are true, then that's horrific. And that's something we would normally intervene to rectify and try to fix. And now those cases are at a standstill.
Your colleagues, what either the bucket that you're in or the bucket of folks that are affected by the Supreme Court decision, can you just explain a little bit of more about the character of their work? Because the administration wants to talk about these people as career bureaucrats or political appointees, or they try to obfuscate what people actually are motivated by when they go into public service. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. So I can't say enough positive things about my colleagues who are all dedicated to public service. And I think one thing that gets missed is that, we're people and we have backgrounds too that led us to where we are. And we realize how education helped that. I can say that I personally benefited from receiving federal student aid and work study and loans that allowed me to go to law school and to go to college. We have a number of people at my job who are veterans who served our country in one capacity, put their bodies on the line and were prepared to give the ultimate sacrifice. And then when they came back, decided to continue to serve the public by helping with education. You have a number of people who are former teachers, including the local president of our union. We all believe in serving our communities. We all believe that we got something and we had opportunities because of the things that were long and hard fought for that we were able to achieve, like having federal student aid and, knocking down issues of discrimination so that we could all have the same chance to achieve. And we believe that other kids should have that same right. So honestly, it's been very disheartening to see that we've been painted with this broad stroke and broad brush when, we're people too. We're in your communities. We're in your places of worship. We're volunteering at your schools. And a lot of us have kids too that we care about. And we want to make sure that everything is better for them in the future. So we're not motivated by who's in office. We're apolitical. We're motivated by making sure that our kids have better opportunities than what we had.
What's your sense? I mean, obviously, I would imagine this sense would be informed by, the city, the state that you live in, for anybody. But what's your sense about the public's perception of this, of what's happening, specifically in terms of the Department of Education?
I think that, and really, I'm actually glad that you asked this, Sam, because I think this is giving a chance to correct, quite a bit of misinformation. I think a lot of people think that the Department of Education is around to tell states and local school districts how they're supposed to teach and educate their children, which that is, far from the case. That's not what's happening. What we are here to do is to provide financial assistance and guidance and accountability for making sure that students are not treated differently in schools. And unfortunately, I think a lot of that misinformation has been spread under this administration. And, it's not just this administration. I have to say that, there are members of Congress who have impacted that too. I can say, living here in Texas, that I have been, honestly disappointed in the fact that my senators and my congressional representative, are aware of what's happening because they have an office in Dallas. Well, we have one. And they're not stepping up and speaking out on our behalf and making sure that people understand how we actually help fund, after school programs and fund special education in our states to make our states better. So I think that, we also have to look at the lens and that it kind of depends on where we live too. And so I can say experiencing that living in Texas has been one thing as opposed to looking at the other states that actually joined in on the lawsuit to save our agency. Right. I can tell you Texas was not one. So I think that's, getting the word out and just helping people to realize it's more than what you may be hearing on TV. Please listen to the people who are actually doing the work and hearing what we're saying. It's like, we're not here to tell you what to do, but we are here to make sure that people are treated fairly and that you are not coming more out of pocket for services that you should get from the federal government. That's another thing I think that's not getting talked about. Like with these services that we're seeing getting cut, including, $6 billion of funding that's being withheld arbitrarily by, the education secretary right now. This is less funding that schools in, rural areas and schools in, low income areas and just across the country have to provide after school programs and to provide other things that your communities may need to help support your students. And what does that mean for their budgets this year for school districts? It means that things could get cut. And I think a lot of people aren't seeing that because all we're hearing is that we're taking things, sending stuff back to the states. Well, things were already at the state level. We never had it, but we are here to make sure that you can do more at the state level than what you would have just relying on state funding.
And this couldn't, I guess, indecision or lack of clarity as to what's happening with those funding, in the middle of July, you got public schools that are basically trying to anticipate what are they going to do with kids. All these after school programs are going to get cut for so many kids across the country. It's going to, I think it's going to be devastating. And I guess, lastly, like what you have these multiple cases that are going on, right? About the various aspects of the DOE. And now the Supreme Court has not really addressed the case on the merits. It only basically said that there was they basically said there's an urgent need to fire these people. So go ahead, fire them. and then we'll decide whether or not they were needed. It just seems completely ass backwards, for lack of a better term. But is it conceivable that you would have circuit courts in different parts of the country say, no, to uphold these acts in the Civil Rights Act and in the Education Acts, we need these lawyers. And you would have that in one circuit court, but a different circuit would say something differently. Is it conceivable that there would be DOE civil rights lawyers operating in one part of the country, but not the other part of the country?
I mean, based on the court cases, it's possible, but I would say based on what we're seeing under this administration with the secretary, sending out an email to all of us saying that we're preparing for our final mission, it really seems as though the whole point is to get rid of the whole agency. And I would say that's currently what we're having right now. We have certain offices that are open across the country, but the intent is still there from what we can tell, that the intent is to get rid of our agency. So right now we technically do have people that are operating in different areas, without a circuit split. But based on what's happening with the Supreme Court now, and what we're seeing our agency do and seeing Congress really not intervene on, it looks like they're aiming to just get rid of the whole agency. I'm not sure if it means that we'll have people going forward. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I interrupted you. Is that the language you're hearing? Final mission? Like internally?
Yes, we actually, yes, that is actually what we received. So, and that's been documented in court cases too. It's like that, it's been documented in the news. It's like it was very set that, the intent was to get rid of the agency, which has been our whole concern this whole time. And even though that is not within the agency's discretion or the secretary's discretion, that is only a power that's set aside by Congress. The concern is that because of doing things like this reduction in force, that is what you're trying to carry out anyway. So as of right now, yes, we do have people that are handling cases across the country. They're not able to handle those cases because we keep getting, tens of thousands of cases each year, and they increase each year. So we currently have people working on things now, but I can't tell you if that's going to continue to be the case, especially when you see those earlier reports in the media. And really, if you look at Project 2025, the whole point is to get rid of our agency.
What can listeners do?
I encourage everyone, especially if you live in a congressional district or or state that's governed by Republicans, that's your House representatives and your senators. I encourage you to call your representatives. We as the union, we are doing what we can to fight back. You see that people are, moving forward with lawsuits, including nonprofits, but it's going to take everybody getting involved and speaking out and saying, hey, I'm very concerned that children are not going to get the services they need if they have special needs. Or, hey, I'm concerned that, student athletes who are, women may not get the same opportunities as men because they are women. Or, hey, I'm concerned that a student may not have the same opportunities to get into gifted and talented classes or AP classes because they're Black. If you're concerned about all of these things or concerned about making sure you have access to federal aid and Pell Grants, please call your representatives and tell them these things and let them know that the Department of Education needs to be held as status quo, which means don't fire anybody and let these people get back to work. And I would say that's not just for, congressional representatives too, because I think that states that are led by Republicans are just as complicit. That includes my state of Texas, that is led under Republicans, that actually flew out to DC to see and witness the executive order being signed to dismantle our agency. So I think you also have to hold your state representatives accountable too, because at the end of the day, education is led by the states. So you need to hold them as accountable as well, and call them and let them know that you're very concerned about what's happening, that you need federal funding, and that, this is what makes our schools and our kids have a better future, is when we actually invest in them, and that we don't turn down investments from the federal government over, silly partisan ideologies. What matters is that we're investing in our kids. So they need to call all of these people and let them know and tell them that we need to keep the department as is. And really, we need more people hired. We're trying to get rid of people now. We didn't have enough people to handle all the work we had in the first place. We need more people too.
Brittany Coleman, American Federation of Government Employees, Local 252, Chief Steward and attorney at the Office for Civil Rights in Dallas, to the extent that that office is open. Thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.